Okay, Netanel Zev, you're back. When to incorporate sources other than the Shulchan Aruch if one is holding by the Shiviti philosophy. So again, I want to just clarify what I said before. Shiviti philosophy is a loose term. We're not a cult, we're not a group, we're just a group of like-minded people who share Bet HaMikdash together and strive to be people of truth. But in our understanding, there are a few places where possibly you would incorporate sources other than Shulchan Aruch. So first and foremost, there are places where Maran himself did not share his opinion. So Maran isn't talking about something, he neglects to mention something. So there are a few books, Chikre Lev, as well as Or Tzyon Ben Tzyon Bashaul. They write that anywhere where Maran does not share his opinion, we default back to the Rambam. Always. Sephardim, we always default back to the Rambam. Like that was Maran always tries to rule like the Rambam. Anyways, so we do our best always to default back to the Rambam. I'll give you an example of that. When our parents came and said we all have to tie Kehillat on our clothing. I spent a number of days alone researching this topic. When I came to ask him, so how should we tie Kehillat, he didn't want to. I didn't have time to look into those details. So what do? Whenever we can, we default back to the Rambam, and that's exactly what we did there. 2, whenever there is a contradiction, an apparent contradiction in Maran. Maran writes one thing in one place in Shulchan Aruch, he writes something somewhere else in Shulchan Aruch. It's very important to look at the other opinions of Chachamim who either tried to reconcile those or who ruled in one direction over the other one. And so those are times where we may incorporate another opinion to see how did other Chachamim see something, because Maran himself seems to be contradicting himself. 3, Maran himself writes in the introduction that there are communities that have minhagim that are older than his book. He never intends to change those minhagim, and because of that, there are places where certain things that existed before Maran, and because of that, those things still continue to be. I'm thinking just a random example off the top of my head. In Hilchot Shabbat, Maran writes that one is not allowed to fold the talit on Shabbat. But you see many Sephardic communities, for example, the Moroccan Jewish community, where they fold their talitot on Shabbat. And this is something Maran and the Bet Yosef quotes an opinion that allows the folding of a talit on Shabbat. And because of this, there was a minhag that existed before Maran, and that's one of the reasons, not all, but one of the reasons why those Chachamim were okay, not necessarily ruling like Maran, because he already gave credibility to a different opinion in the Bet Yosef. And then 4, there are sometimes new realities. I read to you last year from the introduction of Rav Uziel to his Mishpatei Uziel. Rav Uziel was the first Sephardic chief rabbi of the state of Israel. Not land of Israel, the state of Israel. So there are many Sephardic rabbis before him. Now Rav Uziel writes that the way of a Chacham is when ruling a halakha, not to say, oh, whatever it says in the book, let's just regurgitate what's written in the book. No. When a Chacham teaches the halakha is to reanalyze the halakha, not just in its sources, but also based on social conditions, based on understandings of things in the world, technology, science, revelations that come. There are many breakthroughs, things that have changed in reality since the last time this halakha was studied. And it's important. There are things that Maran doesn't discuss. Or perhaps there are things that Maran discusses where we know the reality is different, not than what he says in the halakha, but the reality which he was ruling about may be something different. I don't wish to stick my head in this right now. But yeah, so there are times where even those people who are loyal to Maran will sometimes rule like an opinion that is slightly contrary to Maran's.